Over the last few weeks, I started making the first piece to my samurai armor set. The first piece that I started working on was the Waraji sandal. Basically, in this video, I will show you how I made it, how they were made, the history, and some of the errors I had along the way. Okay, so how did I make these? So basically, I started by taking a wood plank that I found in my garage somewhere and a Sharpie, and I traced out my foot onto the plank, as you can see. I then put nails at specific points in the wood so that I could use it as a loom. Then I wrapped the cord around the larger jute cord around in a specific way that when I started using the smaller cord, I could actually weave it through. It should always be going in an over, under type thing, except for your first few. Your first step, once you get to the smaller cord, is to make a couple knots in the top and to wrap it around a couple times, because that is the place where the most wear and tear is going to happen. Then, basically, you do your over, under until you get to about where your heel is with the Sharpie mark, and you tie it off with a knot there, and then you use more jute cord or rice, straw, or cloth, or whatever you want. And then you do the same thing, but on the back as you did on the top. So you tie a couple knots, wrap it around, and then you hit up the over, under until you meet up with the first cord. And it might take you multiple cords just to get down to your heel area. You can just continuously tie a knot and then grab more cord and continue. So up next were the complications and the final product. So this was my first attempt at making the Waraji. I think that's how you say it. I don't really know.
Waraji.
I used jute cord, a larger jute cord, instead of using rice straw. Problems with it was the large holes in it, down here at least, and the big knot at the top made it very uncomfortable. And then this loop right here, if you can see it, sort of disappeared into here because of this large gap. And this loop here kind of just got tied around. The bottom is a little thick, and these were too short and are also fraying very badly. But yeah, so that was the first attempt, which sucked. So, and then this is the second attempt that I just recently made. I used a larger jute cord for the actual like lace part and the outside perimeter of it. And then the pros of this were with the smaller twine, I could get a wrap around here without it being uncomfortable. And then on the back, it's not as large as a knot. And this is much tighter. There's not many gaps, but there's bound to be some gaps. And I actually got it to go through both the loops because I figured out how to make the loops stay there and tighter. And then I used the correct amount of cord this time for the lace, and I knotted the ends so they don't fray as bad. Alright, history time. Let's go. So, Waraji were historically the simplest form of footwear. They were worn by almost everybody in Japan for work, not just worn by samurai. There are records of the Waraji in the Heian period, which is 794 to 1185 CE, with the possibility of Waraji having existed before this time in the Edo period, which is 1603 to 1867 CE. Waraji were originally made by weaving pieces of soft beaten down rice straw together, but they're also made with cotton, hemp, palm fibers, or even strips of rag. They were not the greatest form of footwear to exist, which makes sense seeing what they were made of. Basically saying they're really bad. Due to their fragile state, they would break fast and wear even faster, and they would only last for about 3 days of active use, meaning that they would have to make about roughly 120 pairs a year, probably a little bit more, probably into like the 130s, 140s. They were often viewed as informal because they looked cheap and rustic, because they were cheap and rustic, and most of the time they're made so that your toes would protrude over the edge of the shoe. They did this so that they could climb steep inclines easier than having the slick bottom of their shoe. They could have the grip of their toes on the wall or the incline